Welcome. You're back in the One Tree Forest with Scott Johnson. I got my copy of We Who Wrestle with God by Dr. Jordan Peterson in the mail. Can't wait to dive into this. I gave Dr. Peterson an acknowledgement in my novel, The Mayhem Dividend. And while some of his ideas have found their way into the pages, I'd say none more than the selection of the book that I'm just gonna read to you. It's in a chapter called Creative Destruction. It's my favorite chapter. And it's where the two main characters are sort of having their own wrestle with God. It is primarily Tim asking Will how he essentially arrived at a place where he is a deist, which is a somewhat misunderstood. It's not really a religion, but belief system, I guess you would call it. I'd like to dive further into it on some later podcasts. But first, I feel like just reading this selection, and yeah, just sharing with you because it's my favorite part of the book, and it's sort of buried way late in the novel behind all the salacious and stuff and the violence and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, without any further ado, this is Tim talking first. Honestly, I'm not in the mood to talk about something that probably isn't going to happen. The thought of it just makes me want to lay down and quit. I'm so fucking tired, bro. If we're going to talk about something, tell me what you talk to God about. I'd like to ask him why every time something starts going good in my life, he fucking takes it away. I want to ask him why some people can have a glass of wine with dinner and I need to have like 5 double bourbons. Why some people have parents and some don't. What's he say to you about all that? Nothing, Will replied. I'm not talking to God so much as I am just thanking him. Thanking him for my chance to be here. Then asking whatever piece of him exists within me, what to do with that chance. You sure you really want to hear about this? It's a little out there for most people. The shit I've tried hasn't gotten me anywhere, so yeah, let's hear it. All right, said Will. I've never really tried to articulate all this out loud before. So bear with me. I'm all ears, said Tim. Will started walking away from the town, took a breath, and gathered his thoughts for a moment before speaking. Okay, here goes. I guess the best place to start is that I'm a deist, which is basically the opposite of someone who describes themselves as spiritual. Deists believe that God is a strict non-interventionist. We don't believe in blessings, or curses for that matter. We don't view the world through the rubric of God choosing winners and losers and executing on some grand plan. We believe God is whoever or whatever created the natural laws of the universe, the rules, which are essentially mysteries, then created man to solve them in order to survive. In that way, God reveals himself to man through the process of discovery. It's not popular anymore, but a lot of the Enlightenment thinkers, as well as the founding fathers, were deists. Thomas Jefferson even wrote a version of the New Testament without the miracles in it. But if God created the universe, isn't that a miracle? Tim asked. Yes, good point. That's the logical limit of the belief system. No one knows what happened at the genesis of existence, or even if there was one. Therefore, every belief system that attempts to be comprehensive has a built-in logical fallacy. You can't ever solve the problem of whether consciousness preceded matter or the other way around. Like the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. No one really knows, and everyone who claims to is full of shit. So every belief system that attempts to be comprehensive has some sort of logical limit. And if you are going to believe in it, requires a leap of faith. Atheists don't have a leap of faith, Tim said. Will replied. Atheists say there was no Genesis. There just is. But that in itself is a leap of faith, because you cannot make a logical argument for it. At some point, you end up saying something like, man's too limited to comprehend infinity. But that's just another way of admitting the logical failure at the core of the belief system. You're just saying that we'll never know the answer, while simultaneously asserting that you, in fact, do know the answer. All right, Tim said. Well, if they all require a leap of faith, and no one really knows, then why choose any belief system at all? Even not believing in anything is a tacit leap of faith, Will said. A tacit leap of faith in it not mattering. Like that Rush song that says, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. I remember that one, Tim said. Free will. Great song. Anyway, for me, choosing one was, to a large degree, a process of elimination. I grew up with people who thought that God was pulling the strings on everything, and that they could curry favor with him by being good and then asking for things in prayers. Even when something awful happened, they'd chalk it up to the Lord working in mysterious ways on some plan. It just didn't jive with the observable cause and effect of things and the arbitrary way in which bad things happen to good people. They didn't believe in anything that contradicted the Bible either, even when the proof was right there to see. I was asked constantly to make leaps of faith that defied observable reality, whereas the deist leap of faith is pretty short. I think the atheists have it right, Tim said. There are no miracles, and none of this shit matters. Will countered. I was where you're at for a while, but on a strictly practical level, it's fucking depressing. And on balance, it tilts towards cowardice and nihilism. Sorry to put it bluntly, but it's true. I would say I didn't need to believe in a punitive God to be a good person. But after reading a lot of history books, I think that's only true in a sheltered context. Sure, you don't need to believe in God to not steal from your neighbor, especially when you already have what you need. It's easy to just not be bad. Once I learned about human history, though, I realized that's not good enough. What about when your entire society is degenerating around you into a murderous, lying world of make-believe, like the Soviet Union? It happened right where we're standing not long ago. I'll interject here for a second. The scene is set in Ukraine. It's not much of a spoiler. How do you stand up against evil when you know it will get you and your entire family thrown into a Siberian gulag? There are always going to be times when something like that is what's required in order to stop the creation of hell on earth. Some atheists may be well capable of it individually, but I just don't think it's enough to defeat true terror of that kind of magnitude. In fact, as much as I hated where I grew up, what I see mostly in the godless society I left it for is cowardice. Just look at all these people not having kids because they're scared of climate change and shit like that, when we're the least vulnerable to the climate we've ever been. We're hairless apes in a brutal world that's always been trying to kill us. And these people are choosing to give up right now, when we finally created technologies that almost entirely shield us from the brutality of the natural world. But even that didn't make me totally abandon atheism, though. I thought it was just the sad reality of existence. Then I came across David Hume, and about how knowing what is tells you nothing about what ought to be. I noticed atheists didn't seem to place enough importance on this. Primarily, they didn't have compelling arguments for why there was a concept of good in the first place, and where consciousness fit into all of it. Then that got me thinking about the subject-object dyad. What the hell is a subject-object dyad, Tim asked. It's the relationship between physical matter, which is objective reality, and consciousness, which is subjective experience. One is nothing without the other. They each make the other matter. There are laws for both, Mysteries at the base of creation. Man's attempt to solve them and create value are what we call technology. Technology not just in the form of physical tools, but also social constructs, science, philosophy, and their unity. What is and how we ought to treat each other. The power locked in the atom and the Enlightenment principles underpinning the Bill of Rights. They were always there, we just had to find them. Why wouldn't God just give us the answers? Why make it a mystery? Well, people who believe in revealed religion think that God revealed his message through prophets, like cheat codes for a video game that you can win so long as you follow them without question. That doesn't track with the way the world works, though. Blind rule followers fail in the real world. Shit goes way off track. I think that everyone has a piece of God within themselves they can access for insights, for true creativity. I think that some people have better ideas than others, but there aren't chosen ones, whom everyone is bound to listen to, lest they burn in hell. Some people are just better observers. Also, you can't cheat the game of life. All you can do is figure it out as you go. That's also what compels us to want to play the game in the first place. No one wants to play a game they know they can win. Tim asked, so that's all life is? A big cosmic video game? And you call the atheist nihilist? Not exactly, Will said. Like I said, it's more of a mystery played like a game. So the analogy would be more like a cosmic game of Clue. And the biggest example, the hardest whodunit, is consciousness. We know a lot about the physical world, about physics and the like, but we're still basically stumbling in the dark and looking for the light switch when it comes to consciousness. We don't know what it is or what it's doing. So what do deists say consciousness is? Sadly, deism doesn't really offer any answers on it, but I have an idea I like. Now, keep in mind this is purely just the product of a guy who spent years and years in a prison cell, then lots more years in the woods, just thinking about it. Okay, noted, Tim said. What follows is a willism, not deism. All right, cool, Will said. Have you heard of the multiverse theory? That there are infinite parallel universes? Tim said. Yeah, good answer for going off the cuff. Thanks, I think. Are you saying that's true? No. Well, not exactly anyway. I think there are infinite potential universes, and that consciousness is an agent that turns infinite potential into singular reality. If something is not observed, or more accurately, judged by consciousness, then it is not real. It remains in a state of infinite potential. Like the eyes of Medusa turning men they gaze upon into stone, consciousness destroys all the other things men could have been and places what they are into a state of permanence, like a statue. Consciousness creates reality by destroying potential, and free will is the final chance to make it right before it turns to stone. That stone is history. Like a Schrodinger's cat kind of thing. There's no cat until you see it. You're in the ballpark. Think about it this way. You think a typical day is that you wake up, go to work, come home, watch a little TV, and go to sleep. But that's only just barely true. What you really did was destroy all the possible alternatives to what you could have done with that day. You could have tried to create something, to help someone, to head up to the mountains and have an adventure. You destroyed all the unseen potential universes of what that day could have been. The things you could have just thought up and did. I think imagination is a tool we use to see slices of the infinite potential out there, a gift given to us to help reveal clues as to how to build a better future. But hold on, Tim said. There are only so many ways to spend the day. Not true, said Will. If you think about it carefully, you realize there are infinite ways to do anything. There are infinite ways to scratch your balls. It just depends on how close you're looking. Hopefully not too closely, Tim said, cracking a small grin that didn't escape Will's notice. Hopefully not, Will said. Anyway, you're right at the practical level about there only being so many ways to spend your day. You have to make a living, for example. If you spend all your time helping the needy, you just end up being one of the needy. When I ask God how to spend my day, the answer is typically mundane. It's usually some version of be productive and generous. In other words, work hard and be nice to people. Of course, that begs the question, work hard at what? And be kind to whom? So you need to have some idea of that ahead of time, or else you'll just spin your wheels. How do I figure that out ahead of time? For the work hard part, you follow your interests. Not in some sort of like whimsical way, though. You find something that you're really into. And if that doesn't work, find something that pisses you off and try to fix it. Easy as that. And what about the people part? You can't be generous to everyone. Well, that's easy. It's called Dunbar's number. It basically represents how many fucks you can give in the parlance of today's youth. Okay, Tim said. Imagine a set of concentric circles that starts with a really small one in the center and then layers of wider circles drawn around it. Then imagine placing everyone you've ever met within those circles. You put the people closest to you, your family, and maybe some close friends in the smallest circle. Then your extended family in the next wider circle. Then it's your acquaintances in the next, and so on and so forth. I forget exactly what they all are, but what you have when you're done is your sphere of social influence. You take care of the smallest circle first, then move outward, but only if you're able to without jeopardizing the core circle. When you get it all lined up properly, you're able to destroy all the potential universes that don't prioritize the things and people you care about most, and work toward creating a reality that does. Which is really important because what you're making is set into stone. Even small stuff, like cracking a beer and watching a sunset with a friend, instead of cracking a beer and watching TV alone. One is much better than the other. And what about big stuff, Tim asked, like being fugitives in a foreign country? That's actually easier, said Will. You put one foot in front of the other, in the right direction, and make sure your buddy does too. Tim wiped away a quick tear and cleared his throat. We'll change the subject. Back to what consciousness is doing, though, because we only covered the what, and we need to cover the why. If consciousness is, to use another analogy, a sort of kiln that turns clay into fire-hardened ceramic, it means that human beings are co-conspirators with God in creation. We're building it with him, as the artists molding the clay. So not only do the choices you make matter, they really matter, which is evident in the inane human desire to matter. We can matter in good ways and matter in bad ways. A kid can decide to be a teacher or a school shooter. We can build ladders to heaven or dig tunnels to hell, right here in this life. We have free will to decide which we work toward, every second of every day. That's why people don't like wasted potential. When you waste potential, you're taking all the great possibilities in front of you and turning them into blah, or meh, or plain old shit. But we don't really have free will, Tim said, not in the practical sense, like you say. There's so many external forces acting on us that we end up just becoming products of our environment. Will countered, yes, there are limits. Limits to the size of your sphere of influence and the degree to which you have the capacity to make a difference. But there's always a choice between better or worse. Right now, You and I have almost no control over anything, but we choose to keep moving forward instead of giving up. Courage is a choice, and I'll always choose to go down swinging over just going down. All right, I think that's a good place to stop. I really like the ideas in there. We can talk more about some of the founders' beliefs and how they made their way into the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence. And yeah, I'd like to explore that on a subsequent podcast. I'd also like to say that, you know, none of the things that Will says about revealed religion should be taken as any sort of disrespect towards any sort of belief system. Anyway, I think that's enough for this recording. Again, super excited to go through, read this. Maybe it'll update some of my thinking on some of these things. I'll close on this. If anybody out there listening has made it this far in the book, or has not made it this far and is wondering, when's this going to turn? When's there going to be a bit of a character? When are we going to see some change in the character arc? Hang in there, you'll get there. If you didn't want to see that, sorry. I actually set out when I first started writing this book. I had no intention of creating this character arc, but I asked God myself. I said I'm putting quite a bit of effort into this thing. What should it be? And the answer that I found was certainly more than it was. Certainly, it needed to be more than two guys who try to get rich and fuck their way across, foreign countries. And I couldn't be more happy that I took that advice, because I'd frankly be embarrassed if that's all this book was. So I think that's a good place to close. Thank you again for listening, and thank you for reading. All right. You are out of the One Tree Forest with Scott Johnson.